All set, Kelly?
Yes, sorry.
Do we have the slide deck? Perfect. Thank you, Kelly. Okay, it's 6:30, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting. Tonight is the Scarborough Public Schools Board of Education regular meeting. Tonight is February 4th, 2021. Can I have the attendance, please?
Sure. Mrs. Giftis?
Here.
Dr. Gill?
Here.
Ms. Castellanos?
Here.
Mrs. Lindstrom?
Here.
Mrs. Seither?
Here.
Mrs. Layton?
Here.
Mrs. Turner?
Here.
Mr. Bennett?
Here.
And Ms. Giftis?
Here.
Excellent. Agenda item 3.0 is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we go into adjustments to the agenda, Nick, I know that you had wanted to say something quickly.
Yes, I just wanted to say very quickly that I've had a pretty serious back injury. And I just say that because I hated getting up and moving around a lot during this meeting and shutting off my camera and appearing in a different position. And so if you see that, I'm listening and I'm paying attention, but I'm in a significant amount of pain. So I'll leave it at that and just say I take tonight very seriously, but if you see my camera pop on and off, that is why. Thanks, April.
Thank you, Nick, and I'm sorry to hear that.
Thanks.
Okay. Agenda item 4.0 is adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments to the agenda this evening, Sandy?
Yes. I'd like to add one to the new business area, and it would be the Scarborough High School Program of Studies.
Okay, I will move to, and sorry, I meant to say this before, been brushing up on my parliamentary procedure in my infinite spare time, and just trying to get better here and facilitate meetings. And one thing I realized is that I had made an adjustment to the agenda a few weeks ago and we didn't vote on it. And so tonight we will do it correctly. And I will make a motion to add agenda item 10. Let's put it in front of approval of the 2021 board goals. So this will become agenda item 10.2, approval of the SHS course of studies. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, and Diane, could you please call the vote?
Sure. Mrs. Giftis?
Yes.
Dr. Gill?
Yes.
Ms. Castellanos?
Yes.
Ms. Layton?
Yes.
Mrs. Lindstrom?
Yes.
Mrs. Seither?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
And Ms. Giftis?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Okay, agenda item 5.0 is public comment. For those in attendance who have never made a public comment, or for those who would like to make a public comment tonight who are unsure how to do so, we take public comment via blue little raisey hand in the Zoom window, which can be found if you go to participants. You should be able to see the list. And next to yourself, there should be a little blue button that says raise hand. And so for those of you who would like to make public comment, if you raise your hand, we will be able to promote you to speak. Additionally, if you would like to make public comment and you are struggling to figure out Zoom or navigate Zoom, you certainly would not be alone. You can email the board at publiccomment@scarboroughschools.org, and those public comments can be read into the public record. I have a few hands being raised, and so I will call on people in the order that they raise their hands. As a reminder, please direct your comment to me, the chair, and each speaker should limit their public comment to 3 minutes, please. And with that, I will promote you one at a time. Ms. Shook, you may go ahead.
Hello, my name is Michelle Shupp and I live on Holmes Road in Scarborough. I am also a teacher of color in the Scarborough Public School District. I'm here today to support the students of Scarborough Public Schools. I'm here to lift up and amplify the adjustments required by the Civil Rights Club, the Reducing Sexism and Violence Club, and the Scarborough Anti-Racism Coalition students. This is the work of my life. Community members, students, and staff from across the district have contacted me with concerns about the uniform nature of our staff and student representation on the DEI steering committee. Is the Asian voice needed in these discussions? Yes. Should our voices be the only BIPOC voices? Clearly not. We know that you, the school board, care about students. We know it. We've watched the members of this board stand up for what they believe to be right and just at great personal cost over the years. What the students are asking you to do is this: listen to them. My God, we are so fortunate. We have a group of students who are educated, practiced, and involved. Students who are trained in equity practices, some of them for 5 or more years. Students who have listened to their marginalized peers. Students whose sense of justice and righteousness has led them to say, no more, adults, do better. We just need to get out of their way. I think about my parenting. I'm a voracious reader, I'm a teacher. I know a lot about child psychology and behavior. I try my best to apply that knowledge to my own 3 neurodivergent, gender questioning, multiracial children. However, despite my best intentions, I screw up a lot. A lot. My children will say to me, well, Ma, I just can't do it the way you want me to do it. This isn't right for me. Sometimes they're just being defiant. Most of us are parents. Sometimes they're just being defiant. But I mean, they're human. Oftentimes though, they're right. It's not gonna work for them the way it's written in a book. So I have 2 choices as a parent. I can dig in and say, but hey, this is what the experts say. This is what's worked for every other group of people. So you just go to your room, listen to mom. Or I can sit down with them and say, look, I've been a parent for 11 years. I'm gonna mess up. I'm ready to listen. Nobody knows you better than you. How can we do better together? Our students want to know, if we are building this table of equity, why can't we just make the table bigger? Why is there a fence around the field? We need more students on this committee. We need Black students on this committee. If not enough applied, which is like a classic statement that structures make systemically, we need to reach out to the student leaders of those student-led groups and ask, how can we do focused outreach? We need Black student voices at the table. How can we keep them safe? How can we make them feel safe enough to apply? Can you help us? I'll tell you, our students can. They can help us. Why are we telling them no? Our civil rights history, every civil rights victory in American history has been built on the backs of Black activists. Sojourner Truth, Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, Marsha P. Johnson. Pride started with a riot, folks. Malcolm X, James Baldwin, Angela Davis, Martin Luther King Jr., Coretta Scott King, Bree Newsom, Valissa Thompson, and an extraordinary disabilities advocate for Black and brown people, Opal Tometi. And yet, every time Black Americans are the last people who receive the benefits of their efforts. BIPOC people are tired in a way that sleep can't cure. We haven't been fighting for equity for 3 months. We've been fighting for equity since we were born. Look, the kids don't care about being right. They want to do what's right. Turns out they're doing both. Thank you.
Thank you. Isabel, I'm going to go ahead and promote you. And Kelly, if you could help me or Diane by demoting our previous speaker. So Isabel first, please.
Thank you. My name is Isabel Liu. I am the president of the Civil Rights Club at Scarborough High School, and I'm also a member of the Scarborough Anti-Racism Coalition. I was selected to be a part of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and I chose myself to decline the position. After seeing the results of the selected members, I was deeply concerned with the lack of diversity. So here is my message to the board and those who formed the members. I will never feel comfortable moving towards an equitable community without Black voices leading the change. Without that, no action taken will be truly understanding and supportive of Black people. I was deeply troubled to find the disparity of Black members and minority members in general within the selected group. You all know how many Black representatives made it onto that committee. Do better. Asian students like myself cannot represent all BIPOC students, especially not Black students, who are the most marginalized group. Our experiences with racism are drastically different. Similarly, adults cannot represent all K-8 students. If a child experiences discrimination or racism, they will not tell their white teachers. It is exhausting and traumatizing, mentally and emotionally, to vocalize these things. Therefore, much of the inequity that this committee seeks to fix can only be brought to the table directly from students of color or other marginalized groups, or else it may not be brought at all. Additionally, think about this. The DEI committee would not have existed without the Civil Rights Club, RSVP, SARC, all student-led groups advocating for equity within the community. This shows that students are more than capable of directing the change. As the president of the Civil Rights Club, I can safely say that our club and all the students within it, we work in collaboration towards every single one of our goals. We come from all different demographics, and we know that in order to battle the social constructs created against us, we have to stand in solidarity. And that is exactly what we are doing now. My words and my voice directly reflect the voices of my fellow Civil Rights Club members. We recognize and truly appreciate the growth that has come from the school board and administration thus far. But in regards to the DEI committee, we need you to do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Jay, you're next.
My name is Jerry Krithvas, and I live on Holmes Road. I'm a senior at Scarborough High School, a member of the Scarborough Anti-Racism Coalition, the K-12 SEL Steering Committee, the SHS Civil Rights Club, treasurer of the SHS Reducing Sexism and Violence Program, and the only student member of the Southern Maine Partnership Equity and Excellence Committee of Practice. I have also been selected as one of 2 student members of the DEI Steering Committee, which is the problem I would like to address today. It baffles me that only 2 students were selected for a DEI committee which would not exist without the activism of SARC and the Civil Rights Club, both of which are student organizations. It further baffles me that only 2 students were selected for a DEI committee in a district where the only equity initiatives existing for longer than 2 years have been entirely student-led. Not to mention that the students in question, Isabel Liu and myself, are both Asian and simply cannot accurately represent the lived experiences endured by Black students in this district. I implore the board to add a bare minimum of 3 more students, at least one of whom must be a Black student, to the DEI committee. If this condition is not met, I will be forced to reconsider my acceptance of a position on this committee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jay. Mackenzie.
Hello, my name is Mackenzie Stimson. I'm treasurer of the Civil Rights Club and a Scarborough High School student. As someone who was present at the meeting with the superintendent and the rest of CRC a few weeks ago, I was very confused and deeply troubled to see the list of selected students for the DEI committee. This entire school year, especially back in November and a few weeks ago, we've been told by you that Scarborough administration and Scarborough School Board want student input and student ideas, especially in the realm of social justice. To only have 2 students on a committee that is specifically for equality in our own education system is just baffling. Student voices are absolutely critical to this committee's mission. As students, we often have the best understanding about issues in this education system because we're living through it, an experience that just cannot be replaced. While Izzy and Jay are wonderful representatives and deserve a seat at the table, there need to be more seats for students. Moreover, it is completely unacceptable to not have a Black student on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee. It's not right. I know you said in your previous responses that race wasn't the only factor in this decision, but race, specifically Black students, should have been a primary factor. Many of the issues surrounding equality in our education system and in the larger world are centered around and really against Black people. There must be Black students on this committee in order for it to be really for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are requesting and strongly recommend that at least 5 students total, including at least 1 Black student, be on this committee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Alexa, you're next.
Hi, my name is Alexis Stromsky. I go to Scarborough High School and I'm the Secretary of Civil Rights Club. I'm deeply disappointed upon the lack of diversity, Black people specifically, and the student representation in the DEI committee. First and foremost, it is unacceptable for a committee centered around diversity and inclusion to not have a Black student representative, especially when there have been problems in the past with administrative decisions directly impacting Black students. Black students make up a small portion of our school population, which causes their voices and concerns to oftentimes be muffled by the white majority, making their presence on the committee to be crucial. After all, how can the committee tackle topics of diversity and inclusion when it lacks diversity itself? The students picked for the committee are extraordinary choices, but this presents another problem, that there are not enough students on the committee to make sure that students of all backgrounds are being heard. I like to make it clear that I understand the importance of parents being on the committee, and I'm in no way trying to remove their presence. But students don't always tell their parents everything, which can affect the problems being addressed within the committees. I also feel that with only 2 student representatives among a largely white and adult majority committee may cause them to feel intimidated and less inclined to share their thoughts. Therefore, student representatives should increase by at least 3 more representatives, with 5 students total. And of course, these representatives should be diverse and include Black voices. Due to the actions taken, I fear that the creation of this committee is for performative purposes only, without any desire to address the real problems at our school. Please prove me wrong. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alexa. Priscilla?
Hi, I'm Priscilla Galamulame, a member of both the Civil Rights Club at the high school and SARC in the Scarborough community. Upon seeing the members of the newly constructed DEI committee, we find ourselves disappointed and deeply upset. In a committee that serves to ensure inclusion and equity, we were confused to find that there were only 2 students in total and very few Black identifying or LGBTQ+ members on the committee. While we are not completely aware of all those who did apply, the ones we do know and whose voices matter greatly towards these issues do not have a seat at the table. My experiences as a Black student at SHS differ from that of my non-Black peers and cannot be spoken on by those who do not share them. In the same way, I am in no position to speak on the racial experiences of my non-Black classmates. While I do believe time is of the essence when tackling great injustices, hastily putting together a team to work against these injustices does not ensure they'll be done in a manner that'll benefit the minority. Black students were guaranteed a voice on such issues, and we were completely shut out from the conversation entirely. Without Black voices, no action taken will truly be understanding and supportive of Black people. This is why I find it baffling that the DEI community, which was said to be such an equitable group, had so few Black members. Black students should be the ones driving the change. While the committee may have been highly selective, the fact remains that the results were not equitable, because it obviously did not center people of color. If it's truly believed that Black lives matter, you should know that it is about centering and uplifting Black voices and initiatives, and should never be used just as an empty statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment this evening? Quickly monitor the email. I'm not seeing any new emails. Thank you all very much for your thoughtful and well-spoken public comment, and we will certainly take your comments into consideration later during our discussion of the DEI committee formation. And with that, I will go ahead and close public comment. Agenda item 6.0 is the superintendent's report.
Thank you. We're going to be talking about enrollment, and we do this every month. So I'm going to start with the high school and go from left to right. So at the high school, currently we have 947 students, and then a year ago we had 988. 8 students are being homeschooled, 203 are being 100% remote, and 744 are hybrid. As we go to the middle school, currently we have 703 students. A year ago we had 701. We have 21 homeschool students at the middle school, 137 are remote, and 566 are hybrid. At Wentworth School, currently we have 615 students. A year ago we had 671. We have 19 students being homeschooled, 81 being 100% remote, and 534 hybrid. At Blue Point Elementary School, currently have 198 students. A year ago, 205. If we look at all 3 K2 schools, we have 33 homeschool, and we have 52 at 37 at Blue Point for 100% remote and 161 hybrid. At 8 Corners, we have 224 students currently. A year ago, we had 243. And we go to the remote column, and we have 52 students at 8 Quarters being remote and 172 hybrid. Pleasant Hill, we have currently 185 students. A year ago, we had 204. We have 34 students, 100% remote, and 151 hybrid. If we look at the grand total, currently this year we have 2,872. A year ago we had 3,010. We have 81 total students being homeschooled, 544 100% remote. And hybrid, we have 2,328. And that's our February enrollment. I could go on to talking about the turf field update. I'd like to just take a few minutes here to kind of put this in perspective. So on January 18th, 2021, the Sports Labs company that conducted a field condition assessment of the turf and track of Mitchell Sports Complex. I believe the town provided that, contacted with the company to do that assessment. And on January 20th, the test results were finalized. And then on January 26th, town officials met with the school officials to discuss the assessment findings. The town did request that the management of the complex be transformed to Scarborough Public Schools. And I know this has been a conversation in the past, so it was not any new information. Dr. Nadeau and Kate Bolton and Todd Sousa and Tom Hall were there, as well as Paul Johnson, the chair of the town council. As I got into the meeting, I realized really what they were requesting, and they're at a point, and I know the board's heard this before, but I think they seriously would like us to consider to take over the fields on the campus. And so I wanted you to be aware of that. Obviously, there's a process to having this conversation. We're not going to make any decisions tonight, obviously. They also would like us to consider to put this on a referendum in June. So I wanted the board and the community to know that this conversation came our way, and we thought that it would be helpful tonight to go over the field condition assessment. Again, the town paid to have that service conducted, and Todd Sousa, our community service director, is here tonight to talk about the condition of the fields. Again, it was an assessment report that was completed by the town, and in addition, a key player with all this work throughout the years, Mike LaGage, is our athletic director, so he's kind of hanging out there listening to this, and I just wanted him here tonight just in case we had additional questions that Mike might have the answer to, given his historical perspective. So hopefully we can get Todd Sousa to come in and go over that report.
Good evening, everybody. Just realized I had my wife's reading glasses on, so it is what it's going to be. I'm comfortable with myself, so here we go. So yeah, Mike and I have been in a lot of conversations since the turf track project didn't pass last November, looking at and strategizing how we're going to serve the community, community service programs, but then also high school and middle school athletics. And so he and I chatted about getting a field assessment done. I brought on board Sports Lab, which is an independent contractor, and they sent somebody over and to do a complete assessment of the field. In the past, some of you may recall the big concerns of being head impact, GMAX results. Everybody's concerned about concussions, and that's kind of the piece that was kind of the metric for everybody's response and concern before. The one thing that I found that I liked about this company, Sports Lab, they do what is informally called a FIFA test. FIFA is a governing body for soccer across the world, and they deal with force reduction, rotational, all the other things that go with an athlete being injured, tearing muscles, knees, ligaments, on top of the impact. And so this report was done in that fashion. And so it gives us a little better picture of the, of the field itself. The results are pretty obvious, but they kind of lay into two areas. The field, because this field system has what it's called an underlayment pad in it, it's the turf, and then there's a pad underneath it. This field will probably never, I shouldn't, well, never is a strong word, most likely never fail impact testing, HIC and GMAX, because you can always put more rubber on there and smooth it around. And so this test shows that a couple areas, it was tested in 10 different areas in the field, that there's some spots that need to be addressed. And so that can happen. But that is going to be an ongoing maintenance piece. A lot of the rotational stuff is right in the middle of things. Force reduction, which is how hard the turf feels underneath you. Those who ever walked on a brand new turf feel squishy and soft, and there's a break-in period to them. If you walk across our field right now, you can feel the firmness underneath your feet, and so it kind of measured those things. But ultimately, the field needs to be replaced based on the recommendation for two things. One is safety, the whole big picture, and two, just the visual condition of the field is obvious to even the untrained eye. When you walk down there, you can see the seams are all busted up, whether it's on the rolls of the turf, whether it's where the lines are around the S in the center logo there, you can see in that picture. All those things become trip hazards. Unfortunately, over the past year, we have not been able to really do the maintenance that we would normally done to get this field ready for our athletes. And what I mean by that is, because if we took our groomer and went out there and put the rubber in the field, we can't drag it around because that field will just blow up. Seams will bust. You'll literally need somebody there behind you cleaning it up. So all we've done is this, the sanitation, the disinfection. We've hand raked out stuff. We've had companies come in every season to, prior to the season, check the seams, glue down anything. We've spent anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 the last couple of years just doing seam repair and maintenance on this field. And so now it's to the point where a lot of these things are immediate repair. Talking with Karen, the general manager of this company, he recommends that if we're going to use this field in the spring, that we need to commit to do some rehabilitation, address those two areas on the report that have high levels for impact, do some hand grooming in certain areas, and then address all the frays and split seams that we see on the field. And so that's something we've been doing seasonally, but he sees it as a real risk if we don't do it this season. It's to that point. And his recommendation is to make sure that this field, this project, and I know we're talking about the turf, but the track is a whole separate piece connected to it that's at that critical mass point as well. But he says you're not going to get another year out of this, out of this facility without throwing good money after bad. I mean, theoretically, if he's quoting, now he doesn't do the field maintenance, those are all separate companies, and that's why this company is great. They have no skin in the game. They're not barking for work, if you will. But he's like, you may have to do these restorations in the spring and do these restorations in the fall. And so when you're talking, $15,000 to $20,000 a season just to maintain the field on top of everything else that goes on it, that's a lot of money. So that's where this field result, he is comfortable if we do the maintenance to it, that it'll be as safe, as it needs to be. But if you guys have looked at this report, all those metrics are really sliding on the end of that comfort level. So I think the report does a good job of laying that out for us. So we're in that window of, and I know Mike and I have had a lot of conversations. We talk a lot about liability and risk. And so it's really time for that conversation of how we're going to stabilize this field, make it safe for all the users, but then put a plan in place to move this forward as a group to get this project underway. So I'll take any questions on the report if anybody has any.
I'm not seeing any hand, Todd. Thank you so much for giving us this update. To speak briefly about the meeting that we all had. As Sandy mentioned, Paul and I were there with staff when we first reviewed the report. And I think it's important from a board perspective to keep in mind that we're having two separate conversations here. One part of this conversation is what Todd just presented, and this data, and the fact that this is really a pressing need for our students. This is not something that we can afford to not have time for. And so, getting this to referendum and making sure that we plan for this in our FY22 budget, whatever that looks like is going to be a big priority for us this year. And then the second piece of that conversation is this idea of transfer of ownership and all of the responsibilities that come along with that. And I want to share with the board one thing. I'm sure he won't mind if I share it publicly, that Chairman Johnson had suggested was that we discuss putting the turf in our CIP, but then there's an agreement or an acknowledgement that any of the other facilities charges would not transfer to the school district for the FY22 school year, and that we would do a thorough analysis of what all of those costs were going to be for the FY23 budget, for example. And so I say that not to, lock him in or put him in a place where now I've made it public, but I think it's important that we know that, town council this is also on their radar, and, that there is room for a lot of discussion here. That being said, I think a lot of this discussion needs to take place at the staff level. And then those recommendations and those numbers need to come through our finance committee.
April, if I could, in chatting, again, being in that meeting and having conversations afterwards, the intent of the town is we're not going anywhere. We're still a partner, you know what I mean? We've done most of the lifting on this project in coordination with school staff, Mike especially. And so our intent is not to go anywhere. We really, truly believe that to get this to pass, it needs to come through your vehicle. It just really, really does, considering probably 95% of the user group is direct student use. And so who better to move this project through? And regarding, maintenance of, I totally agree. I think it's a discussion that needs to be had, but it's something that's going to take a while to put together, and understand truly what's the best for Scarborough as a whole, as we all grow, as we all have financial challenges. And so I think an assessment, we may come back to, we're doing it the best way possible. And that's what it is. But I think we need to commit to take the time to work that exercise through over the next year, and then say, okay, we can do this, it makes sense or not, or, where we're at. So I think that exercise will be worthwhile for everybody. But again, we're not going anywhere as far as helping this project along and using our resources to help you. So.
Thank you, Todd. Nick, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to ask a quick question because the finance world is not my forte. That's my husband's world. And so I just wanted to ask a question about, you mentioned moving it into the CIP. I assume you mean the replacement of the turf. And so how does that change the dynamic as far as how this moves forward? So if that were to happen, and I'm just trying to think this through in my head so I can understand it. If that were to happen, then we wouldn't need a separate referendum vote. It would go through as part of our budget.
No. So okay. Sarah can hop in and help me here. But what happens is the town presents a municipal CIP for capital improvement projects, and the school presents our own CIP. The town council, when they vote to approve their second reading budget, the entire CIP gets passed at that point. So whether it's municipal or school CIP, the town council passes the CIP as a bundle. What needs to go to referendum are any expenses that exceed a $400,000 ask. So whereas the turf would be well in excess of that, whether it's in our CIP or the town CIP, it has to go to referendum.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Can I make one more comment, April? I just want everybody clear. This is a two-part project. I know we keep focusing on the turf because that's what gets everybody going, but there is a track portion of this, and then there's a strong user group there where, you know, as soon as the weather breaks, we'll try to plan a meeting to get everybody out there and see it. But, you know, you could do the things separately. It's not recommended just because of pure cost savings and timing wise. I mean, to replace, you're in a 12 to a 16-week window to do replacement. So I just want to be clear when we're talking about this, it's a turf track project, theoretically. So, you know, that's a whole different user group and a different supporting group, if you will.
Your point is well taken, Todd. I will make sure that I say turf track from now on.
Thank you.
No problem. Sarah, go ahead.
Thanks. I just have a comment and then a quick question, which I think you might have clarified. The what went to referendum before last year, Todd? That was turf and track, right?
Yeah, that was a turf track, and then also some amenities that go along with it, some peripheral stuff, long jump pit, new safety fencing to meet requirements. So things that make sense that while we've got the ground torn up. So yes.
Gotcha. Okay. And then just a comment to let everyone know sort of what's happening with finances. We have a meeting next week. I'll give this as more of as a committee update, but one of the agenda items is to discuss the placement of this project within our CIP. I think kind of to Nick's point, the one of the main concerns or considerations that we have as a board to consider is if this goes into our CIP, do we have to take things out in order to get this in? Like, what are we sacrificing? And hopefully the answer is nothing, because it's kind of semantics, whether it sits in ours or town. But that's something that is top of mind and that we'll be working through.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add?
No.
Okay, with that, thank you very much, Todd, for your attendance tonight. We always appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, guys. Looking forward to working with you on it.
And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Sandy, so you can continue superintendent report.
Yeah, so Dr. Nato is going to talk about the school calendar proposed for 2021-22.
Yeah. So we just wanted to give you kind of a starting point of where we are with our work for next year's school calendar. And I'll start by saying one of the key things that we have to do every year, because our students, some of our students attend regional programming, is we have to coordinate calendars with those partners. And so each year in January, those 5 districts get together, and by state statute, we have to ensure that our school calendars are no more than 5 days apart. And that really is to ensure that as our students go to regional programming, that you know, they can provide a program that makes sense for all 5 districts. Because if we were 10 or 15 days apart, imagine from a teacher standpoint, trying to figure out which town is here today and who's got today off, and this school starts at a different time, etc. And so the calendar that you have in front of you tonight reflects just that first element. And so we met as regional partners, I believe it was maybe 2 weeks from today that happened. And this is where we landed. And so these dates are static in terms of the first staff day, the in-service days that have been selected, the first student day, are the timing of our vacations. And so those are things that at this point are cemented in our calendar, because again, we need to make sure that we're within those 5 days. And I believe we ended up landing on like 4 days when we all were done with our comparisons and what we were looking at. So the next phase of this calendar work is really at the local level. And I have come to learn that we actually have a policy on the formation of the school calendar. policy ICA. And per that policy, the Leadership Council is supposed to be tasked with putting together a school calendar recommendation that then goes to the policy committee and takes into account staff and community feedback. And so we have a subcommittee that we just put together at our Leadership Council yesterday. So we're going to have representation from each phase. And we have our first meeting on Monday, and we're going to talk about how to get some feedback so that we can have information necessary to bring forward a proposal to the policy committee. Certainly not at the policy committee's meeting next week, of course, but at an upcoming meeting. And so the pieces that really are still under development are, you know, what are the details of what that first week for students will look like? You know, certainly we have a longstanding tradition of how school has opened in the past. But I think we're also very aware that as we reopen next year, if we bring all of our kids back, which is our 100% intention, if we're able to do that, it certainly is going to be somewhat of a change. We also want to get a little bit more information about what November voting is going to look like and whether we should have our high school students be remote that day. So that's another piece of information we need to collect. And finally, we really want to do some thinking about the use of either late start or early release days. Those have been a longstanding piece in our calendar. And certainly this year, having those at a much more regular rate has proven so instrumental during this time when we know that our teachers are basically doing handstands on a weekly basis to ensure that the programming that they're offering for students, whether it be in person, remote, our teachers have shifted incredibly. And so we want to be thoughtful about what might be necessary as we return for 21-22. So we'll certainly keep you posted, but I know this is the time where people start wondering about what the calendar might look like. And so I thought if I could give you a glimpse at where we are in these early stages, that could be helpful.
Thank you very much, Diane. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that this is a non-action item this evening. So this was just an update from administration. Great, thank you. Go ahead, Sandy. Continue on with your superintendent report.
Thank you. Principal Ketch is going to speak about the high school program of studies for 2021-2022.
Promoting you right now, Sue.
Good evening. So we're bringing forward tonight the high school's program of studies. I just wanted to highlight a few pieces for you and for the public, just so people know how we've been working on this year. We're very excited in the visual arts department to have our first AP level course being offered, and that's going to be AP Studio Art. Our visual art staff of 3 teachers are super excited that we're bringing this to the program of studies, and it will be a way for some of our gifted artistic students in visual arts to really get that college level AP experience. So we're super happy about that. I wanted to just remind, I know the board understands this, but for the general public, I want to remind everyone that Scarborough High School's schedule is built on student requests, and we aim to meet student needs for that. So we try to offer a variety of things to see if there's interest. And sometimes we put some things in the program of studies and it really doesn't get picked up by students. And so we do have a few courses this year that we are pulling from the program of studies at this point because we just have lacked the interest in student requests for them at this time. It doesn't mean they might not come back again another year, but we have taken out a couple of classes for that reason, namely quantitative reasoning, the visual art in the Nazi era course, and robotics automation. And that's because we've combined that with robotics building, and we're going to do that together. So that one really hasn't been dropped. It's just been sort of retooled. There have been some small updates to some of the courses as you got a version with additions and deletions to look at. It's important for you to know that our departments review and revise their courses to be current and relevant, and they do that work regularly. And so there are some examples in the program of studies under English and math where some of those small changes were made. In English, perhaps some of the book choices for different grade levels are moving and changing a little bit, things like that. In technology, engineering, and business, if you recall, 3 years ago, we built a pathway for this department. And in year 3, we are still fine tuning and making a few changes there that better meet student need. And one example for that would be the robotics, automation, and building. We're combining that. Students have told us they would rather be working on that type of thing together. So we've done a little work to make that update. And the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, we're going to see it in a few courses this year. And I don't know if this will expand a little bit along the way, but in some of the courses, you will see level 3/level 4 being offered. And that would be in robotics, it would be in community-based STEM course, and also our Piano 2, level 2 course. And the reason we're doing that is we're hoping that giving it both levels within the same class, that students with varied interests and backgrounds would feel confident signing up for that course. So in other words, let's just use robotics, building, and automation. We could have some students that come in and really feel like the college prep level 3 would be really challenging for them to try it. They have no background in it, and they really feel that level 3 would be the right choice for them. And then we could have some students that maybe have been on our robotics teams and have done some other coursework and really would like that challenge. And they might come into the class and really want an honors level course developed specifically for them because they feel they're ready for that. And the teacher feels that he would be able to do that within the same classroom at both levels. And then hopefully we would have more students feel confident in taking it at either level. The same thing, my example for piano would be that at the Piano 2 course we could have a student who's taken Piano 1 and that's their full piano experience. And we could have a student that maybe has had piano lessons for 5 or 6 years that wants to take Piano 2. And they really would like to be challenged more and take it at a more challenging hard level and get that honors credit. And our new music teacher, Mr. Mosher, feels like he could do both, meet the needs of both of those level of students. So we've done that in a few classes this year where we feel like that might open opportunities and confidence for students. and I'm not sure if we'll see more of that in the future, but it made sense to me to try that and really let students take the course at the level they feel confident at. So those are really the big pieces of changes. I do want to just thank Jen Adams for her work with me on the program of studies. And I do want to really thank the staff who has taken a hard look and done some tweaking of these courses in a very busy year. They really felt this was important work to do to keep this really up to date and current, and I appreciate all of their efforts.
Thank you, Sue. We always appreciate when you come and highlight all of the amazing things that our kids are able to do within the walls of the high school. And I know I say this every single year, but I cannot believe the difference in some of the things that these kids get to do now. So this is awesome. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Sue? Seeing none, Sue, thank you so much again for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a good night.
Thank you. Ooh, this is me. Agenda item 7.0 is the chair's report. So I will be very honest. I have like 6 pages of notes here to go through during my chair's report, and I will try and keep it as concise as I possibly can, but I'm not great at that. So to begin my chair's report tonight, I will be brief because we have discussed our board goals and protocols multiple times to get to a place where we are tonight. We first workshopped them on December 17th. We also discussed them at our retreat on January 23rd. And so really this is just one last final show of our 2021 goals. The new thing that has not been presented publicly is that we decided at our retreat to add a protocol to our list of protocols that are on our main webpage. And so I'll read the new protocol to be added. Says, we agree that the committee chairs will act in good faith to schedule meetings which can be attended by the full committee as well as relevant staff. Committee chairs are responsible for providing agendas to be published to the website. All committee meetings will be recorded and or live streamed whenever possible in accordance with Freedom of Information Act laws. So this is our commitment to the community that for as long as we are using this technology and 100% of our meetings are being Zoomed, that we will record and get those posted. And it was something that we discussed as a board, really to eliminate some inconsistencies in which committees were being recorded and which ones weren't, and things like that. And so I think that this is a really great step forward for us, just to kind of all be on the same page. Moving on, we set 2 goals. Goal number 1 is to promote and grow a district-wide culture of trust, inclusion, and collaboration. I'm not going to go through all of the steps that we agreed to take. So if you could advance the slide deck, Kelly, that would be great. And goal number 2 is to establish a plan to address current facility needs for our future service capabilities. And again, I'm not going to go through the steps that we agreed upon because this will be the 3rd time we've had these, but they do appear on the agenda tonight under new business to be voted on by the full board. Next slide, please. I wanted to take an opportunity during the chair's report to discuss the steps that led us to tonight as far as the DEI steering committee. As everyone knows, that is an action item for us tonight. And so I thought it would be good to give the community an overview tonight, on the night that we vote, of just how exactly we got to where we are. I have shown this graphic at a previous meeting when we were way back on December 3rd, and I want to congratulate my fellow board members for advancing us to February 4th, because We had essentially established a series of steps to take. And through the commitment of all of our committee work, we were able to achieve a place tonight where we could put this on the agenda as an action item. Down below is we had said that we had a delegation of duties. The top row being the duties that the school board was responsible for, and the bottom row being the duties that the staff was going to take care of. And they are well on their way as well. We've been getting the emails notifying us and letting us know that community surveys are going out, that school surveys are being conducted. And so they are our partners in this and are progressing their pieces as well. Next slide, please. Part of our action item tonight informing the DEI steering committee will be to approve the charge. This was drafted collaboratively, and so it will be put forward later on as written. Scarborough schools are committed to creating a welcoming and safe environment for all Scarborough students and staff. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, in collaboration with the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium, MAEC, will promote the goal of diversity, equity, and inclusion for all students in our district, regardless of their identity, i.e. race, gender, age, sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, disability, or socioeconomic status. To further this goal, the committee will, and these right here, this is the action items that we are charging the DEI steering committee with following through. Number 1, review data collected from climate surveys, school equity audits, and listening tours. Number 2, make recommendations to the Board of Education for the development of an action plan that outlines next steps for our district. And number 3, monitor the action plan progress for a period to be determined by the committee. Next slide, please. I wanted to give the community an overview of our application and selection process. In full transparency, we got some questions about this, and not to overuse the word transparency, but there are some requests for more transparency from the board in how we made our determination and our selection. And so I'm going to attempt to put that information out. If I'm being 100% honest, I'm worried that I might be talking past some individuals. And so in my attempts to be transparent, I'm not actually addressing the questions or concerns that are still floating around in the community. And so my request is that if I still am missing the mark, to please email the board, and we can readdress questions about concerning or related to transparency. So the applications were made available from December 18th to January 20th. Our amazing communications team was able to put together the survey as well as a letter that went out with the survey. Our communications chair, Leanne, did an interview with the Scarborough leader, and we were able to get a lot of really great coverage in terms of distributing the survey, swift reach, district and town newsletters, social media, and again, that great article that appeared in the leader. Applicants were asked for their name and email, and they were asked to check all that apply from a list of checkboxes that included community member, student, parent, or staff. Next, the applicants were asked 2 questions. Why would you like to be considered for the DEI committee? And what skills or life experience would you bring to the DEI committee? In total, we received 53 applications from 48 individuals. The application didn't lock you out if you applied more than once. And so some people submitted an application more than once, and we combined their answers if they provided different information in one response versus another. We had 16 parents, parents and community members. We had 15 teachers and administrators, which broke down to 11 and 4 respectively. We had 7 students apply. Next slide, please. In consultation with the MAEC, we were tasked with selecting a fairly small steering committee of approximately 15 members. We knew that we needed to have board representation as well as district staff, community members, and students. Each board member was given a matrix with which to apply to the applications prior to meeting together to discuss who was going to be on the committee. The matrix included race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, disability, and socioeconomics. We only used information that was applied in the open response questions. As you can imagine, this is challenging for a number of reasons because people filled out their survey questions with a wide variety of answers. In further attempt not to talk past anyone, I understand now that upon seeing some of the results of the survey, we should have considered why some of our respondents didn't supply certain information or didn't supply enough information for us to give their application the full consideration that maybe they were hoping for. Community selection was done in executive session on January 21st. For transparency purposes, because it was after 10 o'clock at night, we did not return to public session, which is why we're now bringing this forward, even though the executive session was 2 weeks ago. Next slide, please. On the table, you will find our proposed list of individuals who we have selected to participate on the DEI steering committee. We have a facilitator from MAEC. We have 2 board members, 2 administrative staff, 5 teachers or staff, 6 community members, and 2 students. This is the selection that was made in executive session, and that is what I am presenting to you tonight. Oh, I have another thing to say before I go on. You'll see that I have put down the word chair next to Shannon. And at this point, I would be remiss if we didn't highlight Shannon's involvement since appointing her liaison way back in November. She has been dedicated to this work. She has been on countless phone calls. She participated in the Cultural Competency Institute. And just today, she asked me for permission to register for a free seminar offered by the NSBA, which is the National School Board Association, to participate in an online symposium. And so it is my hope that the board will approve Shannon as chair of the DEI committee tonight under new business. Next slide, please. Okay, so with that, I know that all of us are eager to discuss the DEI committee further. I hope that I did the process justice during my chair's report. Everyone will have the opportunity to speak and make comment when we bring it up during new business. For now, I would like to move on to agenda item 8.0, committee reports. Communications.
Starting off, the Communications Committee, our next meeting is Monday, February 8th at 11:30. We're currently working on a lot. As April had mentioned, we've been busy with a lot of DEI communication, but we're starting this information about the CRF or the Corona Relief funds that we had, getting that communication out to share with staff and community. The money that we got in grant and how we have used it to help get students back in and keep them safe throughout the pandemic. Also doing a lot of work with the superintendent search, working through a survey, building a committee application. And we've been really excited about the ability to send out information through the district newsletter and the town newsletter. I think that has been a great way to get what the school board is doing out into the community. So if there's things that you want to hear about, let us know and we'll try to get them in. And that's everything.
Thank you, Leanne. Finance.
Cool. So we have our next finance meeting is next week on Monday. We scheduled it for the main purpose of being able to discuss and prepare some information for the town council, who has the finance committee has a budget workshop next Wednesday. The purpose of that workshop is for them to develop goals for this budget cycle. So we want to be able to discuss and answer some of the questions that they've already provided us with in advance, and make sure they have all the information from us to make informed decisions on their goals. So that's the primary purpose. As I mentioned earlier, we're also going to talk about the turf field. And then well, I asked you guys all for your availability in March earlier today. So for those of you who were on the board last year, you'll remember that we did the leadership council workshops at the very beginning of the budget cycle, and it was also the very beginning of COVID. And we did I believe there were 3 2-hour sessions over the course of 3 days, which was a lot. It was a lot for our staff to put together, and it was just a lot of virtual time. So given the differences in the budget this year and sort of the focus on sort of must-haves and making sure that we can get our kids back to school as safe and as healthy as possible, obviously given other restrictions, and also knowing that it'll definitely be virtual, we've made a recommendation that we actually shorten it to just 2 sessions that are like 90 or 90 minutes might be too short, so we might go 2 hours. So the invites for those will hopefully be coming out shortly, but that'll sort of really kickstart the budget process with those presentations. Cool. That's it.
Thank you, Sarah. Negotiations.
I'll have to unmute myself. That's me. So this slide has not changed much. One thing I will add is that it says here we did an outreach on Tuesday the 5th. I did an outreach to the SCA leadership. We followed up on that outreach throughout January, just trying to get the process started. We know how busy everybody is, and so it's hard to get the group together. But I did want to emphasize for the board and for the public that it is still our goal to work collaboratively with the SCA team to produce new contracts for each affected group, because remember we have 3 groups listed there at the top whose contracts run out on June 30th. And it is our fervent goal to have those contracts in place on or before the point of the current contract's expiration.
Great, thank you, Nick. Sarah, do you have a town council liaison update for us?
I'm actually meeting with John Anderson tomorrow, so other than the finance committee, I don't have much update, but April, maybe you have an update on the workshop for the school?
I do not.
School discussion? Okay. So as my role in the downtown committee, we had a meeting earlier this week, and one of the questions that came up from that committee was just an update on where the school is. And so I'm due to give that update to the downtown committee in 2 weeks. And I thought that I would just basically hit them with like the facts and kind of just leave the politics out of it and just say like, here's where we are, here's what's been approved, and here are the next steps. So maybe being able to have like a town council workshop on the agenda by then might be a good thing to share.
Sure, absolutely. And I can definitely, touch base with town council too, to see what their calendar looks like and to talk about timeline with them.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Okay, and with that, let's move on to agenda item 9.0, student representative reports.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we're going to start with the middle school. Congrats to sixth grader Bailey Grandin on being selected as the winner of the Middle School Student Council's Kindness Poster Contest. They had so many fabulous submissions, and Bailey's was anonymously chosen by the Student Council, though all of the posters that were submitted will be displayed throughout the middle school just to add a little bit of cheery demeanor to the school. It's great. Also at the middle school, there's going to be a spirit week starting tomorrow, and the days will include a sports day tomorrow and Friday, another day on Monday for wearing your own sports jerseys, and then on Tuesday, they're going to dress like their favorite holidays, and then Thursday is going to be Throwback Thursday, and Friday is going to be PJ Day, so that's really fun. Awesome. So this slide is done. We can go to the next one. Okay, so now for the high school. Winter sports are starting back up. That's so exciting. Things like basketball, volleyball, hockey are coming back, and I'm really excited to see students get back at it. You know, it just improves the culture and the air at our school so much when students are active and able to do what they love. So I'm really excited, even though I don't play sports, to see our athletes be able to do that again. Also, midterms happened 2 weeks ago at the high school, and you know what that means. My therapist got so many phone calls from me that her rates went up, which is great. And all jokes aside, I think midterms went really well in the virtual format, and I'm glad that this is an option for our school in the future. You know, one of the positive aspects about this pandemic is actually how flexible it has made us, and I'm honestly glad that we've been able to explore lots of new options for education. So yeah, that's my report. Thank you.
So in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, students at Eight Corners School participated in a Hero Day. This was during the week of January 22nd, and they dressed up as heroes such as firefighters, doctors, nurses, police officers, vets, and grocery store workers. Not only did this day show respect to Martin Luther King Jr., but it also to the frontline workers during the pandemic. Those are some pictures of the costumes. Okay. And this past month, students at Wentworth participated in a yearbook drawing contest. There were over 150 students who participated and submitted a drawing, and teachers' votes narrowed it down to 10 finalists. Then the students voted, and these are the top 3 drawings. So they will be printed out as the front, the back, and the title page in the 2021 Wentworth yearbook. So congratulations to Adriana, Stella, and Bella. They look great.
Excellent. Thank you, Gabby and Max. Agenda item 10.1, formation of the DEI Steering Committee. Before I make a motion, I just want to stress that the job of the steering committee will be to engage the community in this work through community forums and focus groups. We genuinely believe that every single person who wants to have a voice will have an opportunity to have a voice. And that is our honest intent. I know no one is questioning our intent here. And, you know, we want this to be successful. So with that, I will make a motion to approve the DEI Steering Committee and Building and Steering Committee charge as presented.
Second.
Discussion. Max, you have your hand up first, then Leanne, then Nick.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. So I decided that I was going to make a statement tonight at the meeting because I'm a student and I feel like I need to be involved when students are involved. So I just wanted to share my feelings on what's happening. I know this is a really complicated issue, and very much want to look at both sides. I don't want to seem like I'm just catering to one person, because that's not who I am. That's not what I do. So I just wanted to give this statement for you guys. Okay, so it's a little long, just warning you. For the past week or so, I've been admittedly uncomfortable, as I'm sure you can all appreciate. I sit in a very awkward position as a member of the board, but also a member and ally of the groups that have been critiquing board decisions regarding the DEI steering committee. I've seen countless screenshots of emails, responses to emails, responses to emails, the list goes on. And honestly, I felt kind of lost in a sea of people trying to do the right thing. I just don't know if anyone has tossed me the right life preserver yet. And if you can't tell, my analogies really aren't my thing. From my perspective, I feel like this has become an us versus them issue, a he said, she said battle for the superior argument, if you will. However, this is not an us versus them issue. This is an all of us versus our own bigotry issue. No one is an exception to this. I am a natural recipient of white privilege and the racist prejudices that come with it, as are all of you. And I take responsibility for the mistakes that I've made. We are all at fault and are all responsible for correcting our own bigoted practices. The best place to start this is by examining responses to our own actions, which has been very prevalent this week. In a discussion about racism in schools, I heard a quote that I wrote down and have been thinking about ever since. No one knows what the people need except the people who need it. As obvious as it is, we all seem to catch ourselves glossing over this principle of life. The students have spoken on what they need, more student representation in these conversations. I wish I could provide them what they needed, but we need more students than those who already reside in the inner circle of Scarborough Public Schools student representation. I believe that this goal of equity is equally attainable if students' demands are met, adding more students to the DEI steering committee. In my opinion, the board has done a really good job and thorough job up to this point. I can appreciate how proactive Mrs. Seither has been in her response, attempting to give the most honest, transparent, and articulated explanation, and recognizing that there are some apparent issues. However, that decision is not fully mine to make. The main charge of this committee is to give equity to marginalized groups in Scarborough schools, and any one student could recognize that the most marginalized in the Scarborough school system is Black students. I am a student at Scarborough Schools. I know what it's like to be a student at Scarborough Schools better than anyone on this board, because I have spent the most time in the schools as the way that they are right now. And I have so much respect and admiration for everyone here, because frankly, I get more words than I expected into, I get more words in the conversations than I expected to before I came into this position. But that doesn't mean that my position and the position of every other student that hopes to improve our schools isn't immensely tokenized. No one expects perfection from any adult. They know not to expect perfection. They expect open ears and honest discourse with adults, and adults who welcome student voices, not reject or dismiss them. In this fight for diversity, equity, and inclusion that this board has devoted itself to, there will be setbacks, many coming from the board, and that's just a fact. I would argue that responses to those mistakes, to recognize the error and actively stop it, is more important than the outcome of any committee. That being said, I cannot support the formation of a steering committee, no matter how diverse or equity or inclusivity focused the committee says it is, until it actually is those things. We need equity for marginalized groups, for Black students, for disabled, for queer students, for all students who have ever felt like they are removed from any large sense of social unity because of something they can't control. They need a larger voice. And if this committee is going to claim to be equitable, it cannot deny the marginalized a voice. As Priscilla said earlier, students would rather see a job done right than a job done fast. Take the time to select more students. Give students the voice that they deserve and need in order to be the board that we claim to be. Thank you.
Thanks, Max. Leanne, before I give you the floor, I'm going to promise you all that I am going to try very hard to be fair to people as they raise their hand in order, as well as maintain good parliamentary procedure. So here we go. The floor is yours, Leanne.
Thank you. First, Max, incredibly well said. This week there's been a lot of communication. There's been a lot of feedback, a lot of self-reflection. So I'd like to offer a motion to amend the main motion. Is now a good time? All right. I move to increase the size of the DEI committee by 6 members. The new members will include all students who previously applied and 1 community member from our alternates whose focus will be on students with disabilities.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Parliamentary procedure wise, Leanne has made the primary amendment to the motion on the floor. Now, people had their hands up because they wanted to speak, but now Leanne has made an amendment. And so the order of hands may not be as relevant, which this was the part I was concerned. So Alicia and Nick, Nick had his hand up before you did, Alicia, if it's relevant to Leanne's amendment.
I have a feeling that all of the discussion will be relevant to Leanne's amendment. So
Okay. Yeah. Then we will let Nick go first, then Alicia, please.
Okay, I didn't write anything nearly as eloquent as what Max wrote, which is a little bit, I usually write things down, but I'm going to speak from the heart for this because obviously I've been involved in different levels of advocacy for the LGBT community as a member myself for, at this point, 20 years, which is frightening to say. And I've been part of many challenging conversations. And the one thing they all have in common is that there's a great deal of pain. And there's a lot of experience that needs to be shared. And nobody truly knows the journey of anybody else. None of us knows the journey of anybody in this room or anybody that spoke tonight, or all the different populations of diversity we have in our town. I know that as a member of this board, we worked very hard to build this committee in a way that would represent that lovely list that April had up earlier. And there's more groups than even are listed there to try and have all of those different groups as part of this collective educational enterprise to show us and teach us, because even after 20 years of doing advocacy, I know there's still a lot I have to learn because there are journeys that are very dissimilar from mine. With that said, I had originally had an amendment, but that's okay because I actually like Leanne's better. I completely support adding student voices to the steering committee. I think initially how I felt when we were doing this kind of building of the committee was that there would be opportunities for students to be involved in the listening tours and some of the different work that the steering committee was going to do. And that's where their voices would be so powerful, not maybe on a committee that's going to spend a lot of their time sifting through data. However, with that said, if the students have been anything, it's clear that they feel that seats at this table is what's warranted. And so I'm a little concerned, honestly, about adding all of those seats because everybody here has learned how much I love big committees. But if that's the will of the board, I'm willing to support it. But however this goes, I think we at least need to add 3 more seats to have equal representation for our students at the table. That would be 5 total. But whatever direction this goes in, as long as we give them the voice that they're so passionately championing, then I'm going to stand right beside it because this work is critical. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Alicia?
thank you. So a couple of pieces of information that I just wanted to clarify and then I guess advocate for, and then I'll advocate for my position. First, April, you went through the selection process for the committee and others may have noticed that the process did not include a way to identify yourself as a minority. It gave you the ability to identify yourself as a community member or a parent, I think, and a student and a staff member, but it did not give you the opportunity to identify yourself as a minority. And so I'd like to say factually that made the selection process difficult from my perspective. So I did want people to know that. And you know, I don't know if we could have asked that question on the application process or not, whether that's something that's permissible even. And so, you know, every time we go through one of these a forming of a committee or some new process, we learn things about the process itself. But I would like people to know that for me, that made choosing applicants more difficult because it was not necessarily always obvious in the response, the minority group that an individual represented. I'd also like to respond to Max's statements, sort of prompted me about to think about the us versus them. It did feel that way, and I wondered if people posing their comments to us thought that this was a done deal. We hadn't voted on it yet, and tonight we will vote on it. So those were the applicants who were chosen through the initial selection process. And I think actually it was great fortune for us that we had that break between the selection process and voting, because I've learned a lot. I'll say that some of the comments and feedback we got put me in a place where I felt defensive, and I think it's natural when you feel defensive to want to say no. And that would be really counterproductive, wouldn't it? So I did have to work through that, but I realized that probably what precipitated that was pain and experiences. And so I can understand that and respect that. It doesn't feel good to be on the receiving end of it, but I do wish that I had insisted earlier, before even getting those responses, that we include more students, and certainly Black students. And again, I think some of that can be attributed to the way in which we selected the applicants. So I would like to highlight that for people, that that there was some very non-intentional explanations for how that occurred. And so I think that personally I made a mistake in not advocating for that earlier. I'm happy to be educated. I'm happy to learn, but through myself, about how I react to sort of that challenge. And it was interesting to sort of go through the progression of being upset and defensive, and I did feel that us versus them, but I don't feel that anymore. We are all part of a community. I want exactly what everybody who's contacted me wants, and that's for us to make headway on this issue. And I think that the students' proposals are reasonable. I also don't enjoy working on committees where there are a lot of people, because I think it's really difficult to resolve issues. I suspect that's why Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium made that recommendation about numbers, but I'm certainly not so set in process that I can't recognize when something is so important to the group of people that we're supposed to be representing. And so I think that it would behoove us to approve the motion as amended, and get to work and learn more, I guess. And that's something I look forward to.
Thank you, Alicia. Sarah, you're next.
Thanks, April. I have a couple comments, but Leanne, I tried to type it down quickly. Can you just repeat your amendment real quick for me?
Absolutely. Increases the BI committee by 6 members. The new members will include all students who previously applied, and 1 community member from our alternates, whose focus will be on students with disabilities.
And forgive me, but we know that one of the alternates' specialty is on the demographic of students who are disabled?
Her answer was very much about that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. I think just kind of following off on what Alicia said, and, you know, I wasn't really planning to say anything at length tonight. I think Max said it really well, and I don't know there's much that needs to be added to that, Max, so well done. I think the thing that just has been front of mind for me this past week is these are really complicated and super sometimes awkward and really uncomfortable conversations to have, and I feel nervous speaking, right? Because I don't want to say something that's wrong, and that is not the kind of culture that we want to have. So I commend the students who have come forward and spoken up, and ultimately you're right. At the end of the day, like, I think we made a mistake. We're going to correct that, and we're going to move forward. And I think we're going to do that in large part because of your feedback. I think the one thing I would caution all of us, and this is the board as well, and anybody in the community who wants to participate, is words and language matter. And I think the reason why we were feeling defensive was potentially because of some of those words. And in order for this committee to be productive, I think everyone has to feel safe, and everyone has to feel safe to speak their experience, but also to say something that may not be correct and get corrected or educated in a really respectful and understanding and appreciating manner. And obviously, if someone's being a jerk, we should tell them they're being a jerk. But I don't think that that's going to happen, because I think everybody has the right intent and is really wants to see this progress made. And so I'm grateful that you guys all came forward and spoke up. I think it's really admirable, and hopefully, you know, we'll make some corrections tonight and be able to move forward. So, Leanne, thanks for offering the amendment.
Thank you, Sarah. Gabby, you're next.
Sorry, that means I need to mute, so I need to find my mute button.
Okay, sorry about that. I just wanted to say, as a student representative, I feel I haven't done as well of a job as I should have, as being on top of things and making sure that all the students were represented and at a place in this table, and I'm sorry for that. And I'm learning, and moving forward, I will make sure to do better. And I just also want to applaud the students who have come forward and expressed their concern, and it takes guts, and it just makes me feel happy that there are people out there in Scarborough who are willing to do that. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Gabby. Leanne, back to you, please. And if you've spoken, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. If you've spoken and you don't want your hand up, go ahead and put it down for me. So Leanne and then Shannon.
I just wanted to address two quick things that Alicia had brought up. In building the survey, we actually spent a lot of time with MAEC, and one of the things that they had cautioned us on was to not have please check off boxes. And the reason for it was that people would write to what their passion was, that they would talk about why they wanted to be part of the committee, and that they wouldn't have to feel the need to speak to specific pieces or be, I want to use the word label, and I don't know if it's appropriate to use, but that we wouldn't see them as only how they identified on there. So it was very purposeful from them. I do appreciate the feedback, and I think that we need to make sure that we're adapting to what works best for our community and not minimize or look over better ways to communicate. So that feedback is really important. Another piece that MAEC had talked a lot about was making sure that we did what was best for the community. And the feedback that we've gotten really has been important. And that if we're going to heal, and if we're going to work collaboratively, and if we are going to move this initiative forward, that was really where I came from on why the amendment came back. And I'm really hoping that, to Sarah's point, that some of the words that we've heard in some of the comments that have been made, whether they were intentionally or unintentionally through social media or direct messaging, that people know that we really are trying to do the right things. So with that, I'm all good.
Thanks, Leanne. Shannon.
Thank you. I didn't prepare remarks for tonight either. I like Nick planned to just speak from the heart. But first I want to say, Max, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who attended this meeting and spoke to us in public comment. I think words are very powerful. And I think that we all have heard the message loud and clear. Leanne, thank you for bringing the amendment forward. I think that we recognize that, you know, this is new for our district, this is new for us, and we're all learning. Just like Nick said, even if we've had experiences and we've read and we've researched and we've done our due diligence, we're still learning. We're always learning. And I think it takes a lot of bravery to speak up. I don't know that as a senior or a junior or even as a teacher, I would have had the courage to speak up like you all have spoken up tonight. So thank you very much. I look forward personally to working with you for us all to do better, to make this a welcoming and inclusive environment for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Max, go ahead, and then I'm gonna hop in.
This is just really quick, but I would just like to point out that you've all said like, wow, you have so much courage. But I would just like to say that it takes a certain climate for students to feel like they can speak up. And I'm glad that Scarborough has that climate where students feel like they can call out individuals who they feel like who have done wrong. So I thank you all for being receptive to any kind of critiques.
Thanks, Max. You are all kind and well-spoken and honest beyond measure. So thank you for your thoughtful discussion tonight. I think that we need to offer a second amendment to shore up Leanne's primary amendment, in that I would not feel comfortable if we left the meeting without a plan for how to appoint the additional member from the community. Since Leanne's amendment is to allow all students who applied, that is something that we can just authorize right now. But we need a process to add that additional community member. So and I don't see anybody's hand shooting up, I can make a stab at it. Kristen, go ahead.
I don't know if they want this job, but can we give it to the 2 board members on the DEI committee to choose?
We absolutely can grant authority to Shannon and Alicia to make that selection as part of this overall amendment. That's definitely something that we could do. Alicia.
No, thank you.
What would you be more amiable to it if it was you and me and Shannon?
I guess my preference would be that it's offered to whoever Leanne identified who was next on the list. I don't know if we identify that person by name, or, I mean, that's why we had an alternate. So I would feel take it for what it's worth. That's my opinion. I know that I don't want to be responsible for that in a vacuum. That was my understanding of the reason for having an alternate. And if we have an alternate who fits that category, my preference would be to just identify that individual.
Kristen.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I was assuming we were going with Leanne's suggestion and that it would just be you guys making it official. But if it's easier to just say we're going to go with the alternate, that's fine. If we can do that procedurally.
Shannon.
As just a point of clarification, can we, is it permissible for us to hold a quick meeting and discuss the last seat as a board?
That's a great question. In all of this process and in all of the learning that I have done over the last 2 weeks, one of the things that has come to my attention is that we should not be going into executive session as a full board to discuss the appointment of individuals to a committee. And so the recommendation from legal is that we appoint a small committee from the board to make those recommendations. And so in the future, and then I'm actually going to have legal come and do a workshop with us so that we get it right when we do the superintendent search committee. But in the meantime, she advised me not to leave this meeting tonight without a process in the event that it's the will of the board to add additional members.
So that would then be like the you, me, Alicia group that you mentioned.
So I was right. So I was trying to take a little bit of the heat off as chair because I am a whatever it's called, member of all of the committees. If needed, I could be that third person, and the board could give me that authority in addition to you and Shannon and you and Alicia. That was just one possible avenue for doing that.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
I guess my only concern is the conversation. We had a few applicants that expressed desire in this area, and I'm worried that I feel that we should give all of those that express this particular concern equal consideration if we're going to add this position. That's my concern.
So just to, from a procedural standpoint, Leanne's amendment is specific to the alternate list. So we would only be, if we approve Leanne's amendment, then we would only be selecting from our list of alternates. Sarah.
I think just for my clarification, and maybe for those in the public, because we did state in our selection process that we were like considering sort of the disabled demographic as a consideration for this committee. We have selected somebody we have a teacher who's a special education teacher, is correct? So this would be an intentional expansion of that group. Okay, in addition to the students. Okay, then yeah, April, I don't really know. I personally, I'm fine with the three of you guys, appointing you guys to make that decision as well. Given that we've already discussed it at length.
Okay, so go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, as I was sitting here listening to this, a committee to establish a committee kind of made my blood crawl, my skin crawl a little bit. And then second, I feel like we have one of two choices that doesn't send us down a slippery slope. One is that we just do it with the students, because basically what we're doing is we're saying, well, we're going to establish that there can be 7 students on the committee, and only 7 applied, so here you go. I feel like appointing another adult in this way sends us down a slippery slope of, well, how do we really do that? And did we identify that as a need? And as Sarah pointed out, we do have an individual who does serve that committee. Plus we have our amazing staff that work with those individuals that the committee can call on to get that expertise and those perspectives when they need to be expanded upon. So part of me is like, maybe it's just cleaner if we go the student route and not do the additional adult. But if people are really for that, I would also be comfortable with the mini committee appointing another person to the big committee, which is now bigger than we ever imagined. So I'm comfortable with that either way, but it feels slippery a little bit with adding more adults in one particular category.
I just thought of this too, and then Kristen, I'm going to go to you, and then Alicia. I think you guys probably could grant me the authority to appoint the second or the other person, and so I could have discussions with individuals about who they would like to see that person be, and then you could grant me the authority to appoint that person to the committee. So that would be another avenue that we could go. Kristen, and then Alicia.
I would be good either way with however we decide it. But well, I had two things, and one, I don't even know if this is the appropriate time to ask it, but that's my second question. But to the point of adding this adult, I actually think it's important because it is another need that was brought to our attention, and I agree with it. I think there is a fairly big hole there, and I'm not sure that staff will necessarily have the same perspective that somebody outside of the school might have, be it a parent or just be it another community member. So that's, I want to see that other position added for that reason. But my other question is, I don't want to approve the committee without getting a chance to ask it, but I think, you know, Nick talked about it earlier, what we had in mind with the steering committee versus subcommittees and focus groups and all of that. If someone is on this steering committee and accepts this position, can they then serve on future subcommittees if those have particular interest to them, or does being on this steering committee preclude you from doing additional work?
So I certainly can't, don't want to speak out of turn here, but my impression would be, or my understanding would be, that the DEI steering committee would establish their own set of rules and norms. And so if they as a committee said, if you're on the steering committee, you cannot participate in, a subcommittee, then that would be their rule and norm that they establish. Or maybe they'll say you must serve on one of these breakout, so I think they'll establish their own rules around that.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure people knew what they were accepting.
Yep, great question. Alicia.
So I just want to make sure that we, I think it's important that we conclude this decision-making process tonight. So I just want to make sure that whatever route we choose concludes this process so that the committee is formed and we can start the work. So I just want to advocate for that. And I agree with Leanne's motion. I do want to point out that I feel like we're sort of teetering on analysis paralysis and worried that, not everybody is represented, and not all minority groups are represented by this committee. And one of the things that I've found to be uncomfortable with this discussion has been the way that it seems like we are analyzing which minority group is more worthy of representation over other groups. And that feels really awful to me, to be honest. And so I just want to point that out, I guess. I worry that if we don't conclude the process, that other groups are going to say, we're not represented, and that we can't have every group represented to the extent that we want them to be represented. I think that we need to put some faith in the process behind the consortium leading it, and that we can make recommendations for subcommittees as necessary. So I'm in support of the motion, but I would like some finality because I think it undermines the process in general and in the future. And so I'm happy to sort of make this change for the students because I think it's the right thing to do. I'm a little bit worried about leaving it open-ended and what that means for the future.
To your point, Alicia, I think, just as we are being open and flexible and trying to adapt when necessary and pivot when necessary, in my mind, if the DEI steering committee forms and you all get to work and there is a need, or there is some issue that you are just feeling like you are not equipped to handle as a committee because you need more voice, then we'll pivot again, you know, and so to your point, let's have some finality tonight, but then also with the understanding that this is not going to be the first time we have a learning curve. Okay, so I still need somebody to make a secondary motion to grant authority to somebody or somebodies to make this happen. Nick.
Okay, so I may say this wrong, but I move to make a secondary emotion. This whole thing is emotional. A secondary motion to grant our chair, April, the authority to appoint an appropriate alternate to fill the role that's been identified through Leanne's motion.
Second? Do I have to second that?
Yes. Discussion. Seeing none, Diane, could you please call the vote on the secondary amendment?
Okay, so everyone knows what is the motion that's on the table.
The secondary amendment motion is to give authority to April Seiler, the chair, to appoint an additional member to the DEI steering committee from the list of alternates chosen.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Giftus?
Yes.
Dr. Gill?
Yes.
Ms. Casalonis?
Yes.
Ms. Layton?
Yes.
Mrs. Lindstrom?
Yes.
Mrs. Seither?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner? Mrs. Turner?
Thumbs up.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
And Ms. Giftus?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So now going back to the first amendment to the primary amendment to the main motion, which is Leanne's. And I think probably it's beneficial or helpful if Leanne reads it one more time, or Sarah, if you wrote it down, because I just saw Leanne drop.
I think I'm back.
Oh, perfect. Leanne, would you mind reading your amendment one more time?
Sure. Increase the size of the DEI committee by 6 members. The new members will include all students who previously applied and 1 community member from our alternates whose focus will be on students with disabilities.
Is there any further discussion of the primary amendment? Okay, Diane, I think you can call the vote, please.
Okay. Mrs. Giftus?
Yes.
Dr. Gill?
Yes.
Casalonis?
Yes.
Ms. Layton?
Yes.
Mrs. Lindstrom?
Yes.
Mrs. Seither?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes, and thank you guys.
And Ms. Giftus?
Yes.
Okay, and now we need to vote on the main motion as amended. Is there any further discussion of the main motion?
Just that you really knocked this parliamentary procedure out of the park, April. This is a master class.
No, it's so natural in the way it flows too. Well done.
Diane, could you call the vote, please?
Absolutely. Mrs. Giftus?
Yes.
Dr. Gill?
Yes.
Ms. Casalonis?
Yes.
Ms. Layton?
Yes.
Mrs. Lindstrom?
Yes.
Mrs. Seither?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
And Ms. Giftus?
Yes.
Excellent, the motion passes. Agenda item 10.2 is approval of the 2021 board goals and operating protocols. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, the only thing I will add is that pending approval, I will send these to Kelly to get posted.
Okay. Mrs. Giftus?
Yes.
Dr. Gill?
Yes.
Ms. Casalonis?
Yes.
Ms. Layton?
Yes.
Mrs. Lindstrom?
Yes.
Mrs. Seither?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner,
Yes.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
and Miss Giftis.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. The motion passes. Agenda item 10.3 is approval of the 2021 high school program of 2021-2022 high school program of studies. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
I'm just wondering if I can go back to high school for a little while now that Aaron's graduating, because there's some great classes in there. So
Agreed. Diane, I think you can call the vote, please.
Okay. Mrs. Giftis,
Yes.
Dr. Gill,
Yes.
Miss Castellanos,
yes.
Miss Layton,
Yes.
Mrs. Lindstrom,
Yes.
Mrs. Seither,
Yes.
Mrs. Turner,
Yes.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
and Miss Giftis.
Yes.
Perfect. The motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Agenda item 10.4 is the approval of a consulting firm to assist with the superintendent search. And I had asked Leanne ahead of time, since my Zoom is like the most basic version, if she could please do a screen share of the contract that was sent to us. This was sent to the board in advance. And so everyone has had this in their packet. Again, for transparency purposes, we met and discussed our scope of work and what qualifications we were looking for in a superintendent search firm. We received 5 packets from interested firms, 3 of which I solicited and 2 of which came to us unsolicited. We laid out what we believed, like I said, was our requirements for our scope of work. And in front of you is a contract from DD&M Educational Leadership LLC. They are excited to work with us. They are going to only take us on. They're going to take us on as one of their, if not their only client for this search, which was something that was very appealing and exciting to us as a board. They have extensive experience and history with Scarborough, and so with that, the last piece of this conversation that we need to have publicly is a discussion of which tier we fall into and which tier we're going to enter into a contract with them. And so if you'll remember, they had kind of a first level service, which was listed, and it had all of the services that came along with that. And the price for that was $4,000. They had a next level, which they considered their consultant level, which was all of the services from part A. And then it kind of offered us an a la carte option to add services at the cost of $100 an hour for their time. And then they offered us a third package, which was kind of an all-inclusive, hand them the keys and ask them to just take care of this for us. And that package was $10,000. We as a board discussed that we've done a lot of the legwork. 5 of the 7 of us participated in the search in 2019. We have a tremendous amount of resources from that search that DD&M can review for us to make sure that they are current and relevant, but that some of the things that were included in the $10,000 package were just above and beyond the services that we thought we were going to require. So the contract that I am presenting is a contract to enter into an agreement with them at the $4,000 level plus consultancy. So if there's anything that comes up that isn't covered by the base package, they will be available to us at an hourly rate. Does anyone have any questions? Leanne, and then Alicia.
Is there a cap where we have the consultancy fees? Would they cap us at no more than the 10,000 all in if we hit that number?
That is an excellent question. I do not know the answer to it off the top of my head. I can imagine that it's good business practice to enter into a contract in good faith with a school district and anticipate that the cost will be in excess of the all-in package. But that might just be my opinion.
I would agree. I just want to make sure that we're protected is all.
Yep. Nope. That's a great question. Alicia.
Can you let us, the public, know what the cost has been for the past 2 superintendent searches?
I sure can. So in 2016, the school board entered into a contract with the company NESDEC, and the total cost for the search was $14,760. In 2019, the board entered into an agreement with the search firm MSMA, and the total cost for that search was $5,507.50.
Thank you.
So you all praised me for my parliamentary procedure, but I should have put this to a motion before we had the bulk of our discussion. So with that, I would like to make a motion to allow the Scarborough Board of Education to enter into a contract with DDM as presented.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Now discussion, and I apologize, I did that backwards. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Diane, could you call the vote, please?
Sure. Mrs. Giftis?
Yes.
Dr. Gill?
Yes.
Ms. Castellanos?
Yes.
Ms. Layton?
Yes.
Mrs. Lindstrom?
Yes.
Mrs. Seither?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
And Ms. Giftis?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. The motion passes. Next is agenda item 10.5, which is the appointment of board members to the Superintendent Search Committee. And so I will make a motion to approve Alicia Giftis and Leanne Castellanos, to appoint rather, Alicia Giftis and Leanne Castellanos, as well as myself, to the Superintendent Search Steering Committee. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Nick.
Just for clarification, I'm remembering this conversation before. Which committee is this? There's the steering committee and there's the search committee, but there's going to be another committee, right? That's like the interview committee, right?
So this is not, yes, this is not a question without distinction. So thank you for bringing this up. And I know how much you love committees. So what I could have done was I could have granted authority to Alicia and Leanne at the same time as we did all of our other committee approvals back in December. And that would have cleaned this up a little bit, given how many moving pieces we had and how much commitment we had at the time. We weren't 100% positive who was going to be able to commit. And so this really just authorizes me and Alicia and Leanne to now meet with DD&M to iron things out, like the timeline and the survey and, preparatory work for aligning us to have a successful search committee. There will be the formation of a superintendent interview committee. And the superintendent interview committee will have community members, faculty, board representation, a student representative, all those kinds of good things. So there will be another committee coming down the line, but that's not what this is. This is just granting authority for the three of us to be able to work with DDM.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay. Diane, please call the vote.
Mrs. Giftis,
Yes.
Dr. Gill,
Yes.
Ms. Katsalonis,
Yes.
Mrs. Layton,
Yes.
Mrs. Lindstrom,
Yes.
Mrs. Seither,
Yes.
Mrs. Turner,
Yes.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
and Ms. Giftis.
Yes.
Excellent. The motion passes. Last, we have agenda item 10.6, agenda item 10.7, and agenda item 10.8, which are the meeting minutes of December 17th, 2020, the meeting from the workshop. We have meeting minutes from the December 17th business meeting, as well as meeting minutes from the January 7th regular business meeting. And I'm going to go ahead and bundle those all together. Do I have a motion to approve as written?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, Diane?
Mrs. Giftis,
Yes.
Dr. Gill,
Yes.
Ms. Katsalonis,
Yes.
Ms. Layton,
Yes.
Mrs. Lindstrom,
Yes.
Mrs. Seither,
Yes.
Mrs. Turner,
Yes.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
and Ms. Giftis.
Yes.
Agenda item 11.0 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Giftis,
Yes.
Dr. Gill,
Yes.
Ms. Katsalonis,
Yes.
Ms. Layton,
Yes.
Mrs. Lindstrom,
Yes.
Mrs. Seither,
Yes.
Mrs. Turner,
Yes.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
and Ms. Giftis.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your evening.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.